Good afternoon, everyone, or early evening, as the case may be, and other times of day in different time zones. I'm sure we've got folks joining from all around the world. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Carolyn Allum. I'm a proud alum from the class of 2005, and I have the privilege of planning events like Homecoming for UC Berkeley. We'll get started in just a moment here, but before we begin, a couple of housekeeping notes. Please note that we are recording this event, and we will be using the Q&A feature to submit questions for Stu to answer during the presentation. We will leave the chat open if you'd like to chat with other attendees, and the buttons for both of those can be found at the bottom of your screen. I already see a question. I'll go ahead and answer it since it's logistical. We will be recording this and we'll be posting it on the UC Berkeley Light the Way YouTube channel later. All right, and with that, let me introduce our speaker today. I have the pleasure of introducing Stu Smith from the class of 1970. He's the founder and general partner of Smith Madrone Vineyards and Winery. Stu played football and rugby at Cal, and he graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics. While he was at Cal, he realized that he liked wine more than beer and became an inter-campus exchange student, taking the introductory wine growing class at UC Davis. That led him to graduate school there, studying viticulture and enology. I think I got that right. And he became the department's first teaching assistant. In 1971, Stu founded Smith Madrone with his brother, clearing the land, planting the vineyard, and building the winery located at the top of Spring Mountain, just west of St. Helena in the Napa Valley. In the early years of establishing the winery, Smith taught enology and viticulture at Santa Rosa Junior College and Napa Valley Community College. He was the chair of the 1986 Napa Valley Wine Auction and co-chaired the 2005 auction. Today, he's respected for his expertise and leadership as a mountain wine grower. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our speaker, Stu Smith, Cal class of 1970. Stu?
Thanks, Carolyn. Your bio was great, so there's no reason for me to add on to it. What I will do, though, before we get into this, is give you a little update on the fires that have kind of ravaged Napa Valley over the last almost 3 weeks. It started, it'll be 3 weeks this Sunday. It was in the Up Valley. It's been an extremely destructive fire. Just on Spring Mountain alone, there have been 7 or 8 wineries that have been lost and probably double that number of homes. It's pretty much over now. We fared reasonably well. We didn't lose any large structures. Going back to 2017, we learned what we should and should not do. Although we didn't have any fire on the property in 17. The Tubbs fire and the Nuns fire. We learned a lot and we're in pretty good in position to combat this thing without doing too much of a intro into this deal. I will say that from a personal point of view, we feel that if you're in California, you have to act as though you are responsible for your own property, and that CAL FIRE is not the CAL FIRE or the other units that are out there are not the cavalry that's coming there to save you, although they do a lot of that. Their first job is to protect lives, and they simply can't get around to everyone. And so if you're going to save your winery, save your home, you have to do the preparation work. Like a Boy Scout, you have to be prepared. And you have to stay and you have to know what you're doing. And other than that, it's tough. I will say also that it hopefully is a new beginning for a lot of us in the mountains, in that we have a clean slate. The fire went all around us. It incinerated a lot of the underbrush. It just vanished. And hopefully this is a new beginning from a forestry point of view, and that we can build on it and work with CAL FIRE and other organizations that will allow us to do prescriptive burns every 8 or 10 years. And if we can do that, then maybe it'll be a new day for California in our forests. But we'll see. But it is tiring. It's been a lot of work. Again, we didn't lose any major structures, but we had to replace over 2,000 feet of water line. We have over 100 fence posts that have to be replaced. We still don't have power and water reestablished, and this all happened in the middle of harvest. Some of you will ask or be wanting to ask about smoke taint. Smoke taint is an issue with smoke. Until the glass fire, we were all in the upper part of the Napa Valley in pretty good shape. And what this is that if fresh smoke which is less than 24 hours, is around the grapes, they can be absorbed into the grape system and get into the berries themselves, and then that leaves an ash flavor on it, and it's not desirable. It's not a defect per se. It just doesn't make the wine very good. The last 3 weeks have been pretty hard. If you didn't have grapes, if you hadn't finished harvest and you're in the Up Valley, we were probably 10% from being finished, and probably those 10% grapes that we were going to harvest on Monday and Tuesday of that week that it began. We'll get them tested, but our hope is pretty well dimmed by now. Things that were harvested before the glass fire will probably be okay. Things harvested during or after the glass fire probably will not be saleable. Anyhow, with that, and I'm always happy to take a look at questions during this. I thought what we would do is we have 3 wines to taste. We have Chardonnay, 2016 Chardonnay. Then we'll taste the 2016 Cabernet, and we'll finish with the 2016, actually it's the 17 Chardonnay, thank you. Brain's still not quite working right. And we'll finish with 2016 Riesling. Let me give you a little bit of background on Smith-Madrone and why we're in the mountains, and we're going into our 50th year. When I started, I wanted to go to the mountains because, as Virgil said in 43 BC, Bacchus loves the hills, Bacchus amat colis. And I went to the hills because it was the place that I thought could make the very best wine, because the very best grapes come from the mountains. Now, to be perfectly BC, there are lots of lovely grape wines made in the valley floor, and there's no prohibition for making bad wines from good grapes on the mountains by some people. But all things being equal, you have to have the best grapes to make the best wine. And that comes from the mountains. And part of the reason for that is that 2 overarching ones. One is the grapes struggle. The soils are not as good. They don't get irrigation like they do in the valley floor, and the berries turn out to be smaller and more, and that smaller berry, the flavors are in the skins, and you have a much greater skin to juice ratio in a small berry versus a large berry. So think of a golf ball versus a beach ball, and that volume in the beach ball. Also, if you grow tomatoes, and you water them a lot, you're going to grow beautiful vines and beautiful tomatoes, big, ripe, red-looking things. But when you slice into them, there's not a lot of flavor. On the other hand, if you grow tomatoes and you don't water them very often, and they have to struggle, and they don't look quite so good when you cut into them, they have a lot more flavor. And it's the same issue with growing wine grapes. And the mountains have been, anyway, it seemed like a good idea at the time, and I still think those are unassailable arguments for being in the mountains and making it work. The Chardonnay, I should also say, everything we make, we grow. We don't buy grapes from anyone. So it's what we call estate grown, estate bottle. That way we can control everything that we do in the vineyards, growing, if there's going to be any irrigation, how much, how little, how we prune them. the direction of our rows, the trellising system. There are a lot of things out there that we are still learning. And I would also say that in wine consuming and enjoyment, it's a lifelong learning process. And wine should be fun. Don't get all bent out of shape if you don't quite understand this variety or that wine or anything else. The bottom line is that I've always recommended to people to drink with their mouths, not their eyes. Don't let the reviewers, don't let the label, don't let what somebody else says influence you as to whether you like the wine. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. That's as simple as it is. The Chardonnay that we're going to taste first is grown right out in front of the winery. We like a big, rich, full-bodied, full-flavored Chardonnay, but we also are a winery that believes in acidity. We're a little bit more European-esque than most California wineries. We believe in balance, complexity, elegance, restraint, finesse. We want the wine to have good acidity so that it goes with food, and it's fun to drink. Also, there's many of you probably have heard the term terroir. It's a lovely French term. It's theirs. They should keep it. We should come up with our own term. And a lot of New World people use the concept of what am I trying to say here? A sense of place. I tend to think of it as an ephemeral sense of art, that a small winery, any winery, should have a distinction that no other winery has, that they should make a wine which is unique to themselves. And that is, it comes from both the site where the grapes are grown, the mountains, the valley, the angle of incidence to the sun, the layout of the vineyard, whether it's north, south, east, west, the grower's attitude toward doing this, and then the winemaker's attitude. And those three things come together to make a wine. And I think of that, again, as an ephemeral sense of art. Now, the Chardonnay is barrel fermented. It's aged in French oak, but the oak that we purchase comes from what we call the center forests of France, which are the forests of Trancé, Allier, and the Ver. And they're in the headwaters of the Loire and a little bit just over the hills west of Burgundy. And those trees are in the upland forest, and they grow very slow, and they have a very tight grain. And we like that tight grain. And that's because it doesn't express oak as quickly and as strongly as many other oaks do. So we will, with Chardonnay, have anywhere from 80 to 100% new oak in the wine, and most people won't pick it up as having a lot of oak. And that gets to the concept of balance. And balance, again, is very important from a wine consuming appreciation perspective. Let me take a look here. So anyhow, let's, and while I've got you, I'm sure some of you are relatively new to wine. I tend to hold the glass by the stem, and when I swirl it, and don't start out trying this with red wine and a white shirt or blouse, not a good idea. Hold it by the stem, and the reason for that is because you can get your greasy fingerprints all over the glass, and then it's not quite as pretty looking. And so you just swirl it there, and there's a reason for that, and that is that the surface gets on the glass, and what you smell is the volatilization of the aromas. So if you have a greater surface, you have a greater volatilization, you can smell it a little bit better. And then when you taste it, just roll it in your mouth and enjoy it. Kind of a lemony character to it, which we like. We like, that's a character that we like in Chardonnay. And it's a big, full, rich wine. And it's got a good enough acidity that it allows it to go with food and enjoys it through the evening. Let me see what we have here. I have to go back and forth on glasses. Oh, one of the questions is, how do you get into the wine industry? Or if you're interested, how would you enter the wine industry? And I'd have to say that no matter where the industry is for economics, there's always room for a new idea and a new person. And if you're really interested, you just start knocking on winery doors and say, can I have a job? Can I come in as a harvest intern? If you are really madly crazy about it, you can do 2 harvests a year. You can do harvest in the northern hemisphere. You can do harvest in the southern hemisphere, and do it that way. Or you can go to any one of the number of schools. UC Davis, Fresno, San Luis Obispo, Washington State has got a really up and coming great program. So there's lots of ways to enter into it. What temperature should we be serving the Chardonnay at? Well, ice, right out of the ice is not a good way. The wine's really cold. It's hard to get a good feel about how the wine is. I tend to think of room temperature is a little bit more my style. But then you have to define what's room temperature. At the winery, it's 55 degrees, not a bad temperature, but 60, it's a little bit better for me. I like it a little bit warmer, the Chardonnay, than I do Riesling. I like Riesling. Sauvignon Blanc, I like ice cold on a, burningly hot day. So it all depends a little bit. Do you taste any pear? Sure, of course I do. Pear and apple also gets in there. The other thing about wine tasting and the suggestion, somebody says, oh, I smell pear, and all of a sudden everybody picks up pear. Or somebody comes up with another deal. Our brains are very suggestive. There was a study out of the Chicago School of Economics about 20 years ago, and they had a whole bunch of people and tested the wine. And they had 3 layers of wine. Let's say, for sake of argument, one was $10, one was $25, and one was $50. And everybody tasted them. They knew what the price of the wine was, and they asked them what they all liked. Well, everybody liked the $50 wine, but all the wines were exactly the same. And so our brain cheats on us. We have to recognize that the brain cheats because we don't want to be wrong. And that's one of the unfortunate things about enjoying wine, is that we feel so often we're intimidated and not looking like we know what we should know when we don't know what we don't know. And that's okay. Have the courage of your convictions that you don't know and just enjoy it. With the Chardonnay, to me, it's a wine that is a wonderful wine. I think there are 4 great varietals in the world. Chardonnay and Riesling are the 2 wines that would be white of that category, and then Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon. We used to make Pinot Noir, and in 1986 we grafted it over because it was one good vintage out of 10 did not an economic model make for us, and so we gave up doing Pinot Noir. Riesling is something we've always done well, and probably are recognized for Riesling, both in the United States and the world, as making some of the best Riesling. And Cabernet is our love, and Chardonnay is my love. I love Chardonnay. It's not a wine that you would want to age. You want to drink it fairly soon after the wine is released. 6-7 years old is about it. The wines will hold together, but they don't improve. You don't get paid dividends for holding back Chardonnay. Drink them, enjoy them for what they are. They're great wines. They have good flavor. A lot of people like our style of Chardonnay who are red wine drinkers. And I've come up with a little saying that we make Chardonnay for red wine drinkers. And somehow that clicks with a lot of people. I'm not quite sure why, but they're big, they're powerful, and yet they still have finesse and elegance to them. Here's a question about alcohol going up in percentage, and that is an issue. what most people don't understand is that 50 years ago, if you came to the Napa Valley and you went into a winery and they were bottling, the wine labels all said 12.5% alcohol because there's a 1.5% range. So that would allow the winery to make a wine that was 14% alcohol and also 11% alcohol. So the middle point was 12.5 and everybody labeled it. I was in a winery one day. They were making jug wine, half gallons of a Burgundy, something of that nature. And all come out of one tank, and the rest stop came, and they changed the labels and went to a new label. And they, after a break, they fired up again. Same wine went into two different bottles, all 12.5%. Those are 50 years ago. It's a little different today, but alcohols are creeping up. There is a conflict in California and in the world now about how ripe wines should be. We tend to think that if you have overripe grapes, you're going to get overripe flavors. We are in the middle group. There are people who harvest very early, people who harvest very late, and we're kind of in that middle ground where we think that the varietal character of the wine is important. When you get into very ripe grapes, they tend to be much lower in acid and very high in pH, and they tend to have a sameness. That's our view of it, but it's out there. And clearly, I have been pushing my industry to find yeasts which are less efficient so that we can harvest grapes that are ripe but don't produce a high level of alcohol. When I was a grad student at UC Davis, we had a 55% range. In other words, if we brought in 24 degrees Brix, and that is by and large percent sugar, you would multiply it by 0.55 and you'd come up with an alcohol that was maybe 13.5 alcohol. And today our yeasts are fermenting to where we have about a 0.625 conversion. And so that 24 degrees Brix is making a wine that's 14.5, 14.7, things of that nature. So that is an issue, and hopefully in my lifetime we will find yeasts that will be less efficient, because I don't like the high alcohol either. Let's see, what else do we have here? How does distribution work? Well, that is a whole seminar or two or three. We are regulated by the 21st Amendment, which is repeal. We gave the states rights to regulate alcoholic beverage, and every state being, how can I put this, self-interested by the local folks, made their own rules for the local people to limit access of wine to the people. And it's a problem. And distribution across this, when I sell to 21 states in the United States, I am exporting to 21 separate entities. It's easier sometimes to ship wine out of the country than it is into certain states. Let's see, what else are we doing here? So I hope you enjoy it. I love the wine. Again, don't age it. Drink it when it's relatively young. It goes with almost anything. It's a beverage that you can have by yourself. You don't have to necessarily have food with it, but it will go with anything. And why don't we move on to the Cabernet Sauvignon? By the way, I'll show you the bottle. Many of you have your own there, but here it is, 2017 Smith-Madrone. We'll go to the 2016 Cabernet Sauvignon. This is a blend. It's predominantly Cabernet, almost 90% Cabernet, 6% Cabernet Franc, and about 4% Merlot. In that we harvest all our own grapes, we grow all our own grapes. When we want to plant something new or try a new varietal, like with Petit Verdot, we have to plant the vineyard. And then we have to wait 4 years for it to grow. And then we have to make it into wine and see how it ages. So the wine industry is a very long-term business. It's actually a really stupid industry. When I was teaching at Santa Rosa, I told the students, look, if you want to make money, go buy McDonald's. And in 2 or 3, 10 years, you can retire at the Bahamas. In the wine industry, the winery says, feed me, feed me, feed me. And everything is very, very long-term. That having been said, to plant a vineyard, let's take Cabernet Sauvignon. Let's say we planted a vineyard this year, which is 2020. We'll get our first harvest in 2023 or 2024 in the mountains. We won't reach maturity until probably 2029. That 29 vintage will go 2 years in the barrels, another 2 years in the bottles. So you're looking at 2033 before you hit maximum capacity, maximum production. And then you have to start paying for depreciation, return on investment, the cost of planting the new vineyard, holding all that wine in, all new barrels. Barrels, French oak barrels run around $1,100 a year. And so you have to have incredibly long time horizons. It's a, from an economic point of view, it's a really stupid industry to be in. Now, there are occasionally people who come in and do great. Meiomi was a brand that was started by a friend of mine's son, Joey Wagner. And as a 30-year-old, 32-year-old, he sold the brand with no vineyards and no winery, just the brand for $314 million. So there are ways for people to make a lot of money in the wine business, but they are very few and very far between. So let's taste the Cabernet. Again, mostly it's all French oak. I think about 55% of it is new French oak. And I think you'll smell it, the different varietals in it. Let's see what are some questions here. How many cases do we make of this? We do about 4,000 cases total. We have about 38 acres in vineyard in various stages of production. 4,000 or 5,000 cases, depending on the vintage. This Cabernet, we did about 1,400 cases, so very small amount. And what food would we pair with this? With Cabernet, if that's the question that goes with the Cabernet, almost anything goes with Cabernet. As I like to be somewhat facetious, artichokes, Brussels sprouts don't go with anything. But with Cabernet, a red steak is a marriage made in heaven. Organic or non-organic? We are not organic. We are what we call, we're certified fish-friendly farming. And I believe in the concept of sustainability and sustainable agriculture. And the short definition of that is that we farm in a way that will be economically sustainable for 500 to 1,000 years. Sustainability has no sex appeal, but what it does have is it has the ability to bring in best management practices and the concept of being economically viable. Organic has a fabulous brand, but doesn't allow for introduction of best management practices or innovations. And on top of that, it doesn't have the concept of economic sustainability. And I think that's unfortunate. And I'm hoping that in the future, organic will somehow meld in with sustainable and come up with a paradigm which is successful. In Napa Valley, we are some of the most sensitive environmental growers anywhere in the world, and yet only 15% are organically grown. And that's not success. You need a farming paradigm that will find somewhere in the neighborhood of 80, 85% acceptance. And so we're in an era of looking at all of the various parables, paradigms that are out there. And I think we will eventually get somewhere that is both meaningful to the consumer and meaningful to the grower and to the winery. We're not there yet, but I think we're going down that path. There's a thing called biodynamics, and I don't think it has any future whatsoever. And then you get into the whole issue of natural wine, clear wine. There's just so many little kind of offshoots and things of that nature that are out there. But anyway, back to the Cabernet. I hope you're liking this. I love this. Charlie, you know, the whole winery loves this wine. The Chardonnay, by the way, sells for $40. This sells for $58 at the winery, to give you some idea. The wines are available throughout the United States, well, 21 states, something of that nature. And we're in Japan, Canada. By the way, some of the provinces of Canada are just impossible to sell wine to. Just hideous. We're in the UK. We're in Germany, we're in Czechoslovakia, northern Europe, quite a bit. Cork, question on cork. Cork is a traditional closure, I should say. As my brother says, we will go to screw caps as soon as Chateau Lafite and Romanée Conti go to screw caps. My personal view of screw caps is that I think they're great for lower priced wines in the $15, $20 or below. It's so much easier to grab a bottle of white wine out of the refrigerator and just unscrew it and pour it, and I think that's great. There is a certain etiquette, if you would, with more expensive wines, and I do think that screw caps have not yet proven their worth when it comes to aging wines. And for me, aging wines is extremely important. Now, that doesn't mean that screw caps won't eventually get there. I think they might. What I don't like are the other closures, which are plastic or composite cork. Those things go in hard, and sometimes it takes a young Arnold Schwarzenegger to get them out of the bottle. And I just don't like that. And the same thing with the plastic ones. Sometimes they go in and out very easily, don't do the job, but I'd much rather have a screw cap than one of those faux corks. Okay, someone's asking about malolactic fermentation in the Chardonnay. I'll go back to that. What that is that there's a primary fermentation in winemaking, which is the conversion of sugar to alcohol and carbon dioxide. And there are two main acids in wine. There's malic acid and there's tartaric acid. And in a unripe grape, there's more malic acid than there is tartaric. And in a ripe grape, there's more tartaric than malic. And Chardonnay and most red wines will go through a malolactic fermentation, which converts malic acid to lactic acid, and a carbon dioxide is released by lactobacillus organisms. And some people prohibit, they stop it from going through on the Chardonnay. We inoculate, and if it goes, it goes, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Most of the time it does, and whether it goes all the way through an ml or not, I don't know. The reason it's important is because your acidity from the malic acid, let's say your tartaric acid, your total acidity was 0.7. You had 0.5 or 0.4 from tartaric, and you had 0.3 from malic. After the malolactic fermentation, that malic acid went from 0.3 to 0.15. So it went down in half. So what was 7 now becomes 5.5. So much for chemistry, onward and upward. Anyway, back to the Cabernet, which is, I think, lovely and nice and fun. I hope you're enjoying it. It's a wine that will age. We have wines that are 20, 30, 40 years old, and most of the wines improve. Occasionally a vintage won't improve as long as another vintage. And what I normally suggest is that if you want to see how wines, find a moderately priced wine, Cabernet if you can, Zinfandel, something of that nature, and find it reasonably modest price and buy 2 or 3 cases of it. And that way you can see whether how the wine changes with age. You become a friend with it, and if you write down notes when you taste it, you can refer back to it. And so over a period of time, you then get a sense of what's out there. And I might also add that when you read reviewers, and you go, oh boy, this person, that sounds like a great wine. And if you're with some friends, buy 4 or 5 of these bottles of wines. The easiest is, let's say, if they're all rated 90. Brown bag them, put it to where nobody knows what they are, pour them out, make your notes, and see how you think the wines are to the reviewer that you purchased them because of. And then if you want to make it a little tougher, then bring out or purchase from the same reviewer an 88 or an 86, an 88, a 90, a 92, a 93, and see if at least you can agree with the scale of who likes what. And then you can say, yes, I agree with this reviewer, or no, I don't have anything in common with this reviewer. And one of my friends thinks of one of the biggest, most important reviewers in the country, that if it's a 94, he probably won't like it. But if it's an 88, he'll probably like it quite a bit. So let's move on to the Riesling. The Riesling is a dry style wine. And dry style meaning it is about 0.65 residual sugar. It's a wine that will age and improve and will pay you dividends for your patience for holding it and aging it. It's a wine that will go with just about anything, other than, as I mentioned, those artichokes and Brussels sprouts. I prefer red wine with red meat, but Riesling goes with almost everything else superbly. It's a very versatile wine. It is, I think, it's underappreciated in the United States. The wine sells for $34 at the winery. I think you can hardly buy a better white wine for that price. You can't. You're getting as close to perfection as you can get to, and it provides pleasure. Also, I think the first obligation of wine is to give pleasure. And if your first taste is, ooh, I'm gonna like that in 50 years, maybe that's not quite what you're looking for tonight. Again, big, rich, full, smooth, powerful, lovely Riesling, good acidity, peaches, apricots, pears. Sometimes you get a little lychee character to it. It just seems to me, it's just, I love Riesling. Should it be stored? Should the Riesling be stored in the refrigerator? No. The best place to store it, unless of course you have Downton Abbey, which most of us don't, is on the north side of the house on a closet down low. The worst place to store wine, any wine, is in the kitchen, high above, let's say above the, I don't know, dish rack or a pot area. And the reason for that is that you get a great deal of heat fluctuation. You can kill wine in a matter of weeks if you have it in the kitchen. It just murders it. Again, keep it in the case that it came in, or keep a case and just put, again, on the north side of the house, in a closet down low, And or there are fairly inexpensive wine caves that you can buy, which work very well. You can get a wine that holds anywhere from 10 to 15 cases for really pretty modest amount. The issue with holding wine or aging wine in the refrigerator brings up an interesting issue in that white wines we cold stabilize before we bottle them, and we cold stabilize them because of potassium tartrates, cream of tartar. And if you bottle a white wine earlier than the wine is ready, and you put it in the refrigerator for 3 weeks or a month or 2 months, what will happen sometimes on a wine that is not overly processed is that you'll see little crystals on the cork or crystals down on the bottom of the bottle. And you're thinking, oh my God, it's got glass shards in it. But it's not, they're just tartrate crystals. And in fact, much of the cream of tartar comes from the wine industry, where large scale wineries, not like Little Smith Madrone, will go in and when they clean their tanks, they'll get that cream of tartar, potassium tartrate, and process it and then sell it to the consumer. So if you do get it, it's generally an indication that the wine has been under processed. Not necessarily that can be a good thing, but there's nothing wrong with it. It should be fine. If you freeze a bottle of wine, it changes the chemistry entirely. The wine will never be the same. You can thaw it out. It just doesn't work very well. And I hope you're enjoying the Riesling, because I love the Riesling. By the way, people asked about the name Smith Madrone. Smith is, as I like to say, not a great Southern European wine name. And my brother and I have enough blood, sweat, and tears in this thing that we wanted our name in it, but Smith Winery just didn't work. And for those of you who are old enough to remember, Smith Brothers cough drops were ubiquitous across the country. And those dudes had beards too, like my brother and I. And my best friend, who also a Cal grad, suggested the name Smith Madrone. And Madrone is a tree. It grows in California, from Central California up to the Canadian British Columbia border, east to the Sierra Nevada foothills, east to the Cascades. And we sat on it for a while, and it sounded a whole lot better than Smith Poison Oak or Smith Oak or Smith, Douglas Fir, and so we ended up with Smith Madrone, and we kind of like it, and it's stuck with us, and that seems to work with us. Let's see, what else do we have here? The question is about, we got some folks in Albuquerque, and what do I know about the New Mexico wine industry? God love them, go for it, and try to support them. There are people who are out there making wine in every state of the union, and whether it's New Mexico or Arizona or Idaho or North or South Dakota, Michigan, there are people who are trying to grow grapes and make wine, and I think it's a great experiment, a great venture, and give them the benefit of the doubt. Most of these people who are doing this have never grown grapes before. They've never made wine before, and they've never grown grapes in this area that they're growing it, and nobody's ever made wine from those grapes grown in an area that's never been grown. So they got a lot of strikes going against them. So they need all the commercial help that they can get from consumers, and they're local, and do your very best to support them. Oh, okay. Is there a problem with keeping an opened, unfinished bottle of wine? If it's Cabernet, Cabernet can age and actually get better with a day or two being in the open. There was a study done some years ago that took a bottle of wine, and you can do this at home. Take a bottle of wine, have a glass, put the cork, put the screw cap back on it. The next night, open the same type of, same wine, same label, everything. have a glass out of that wine, have a glass out of the first night's wine. And on the third night, do the same thing again. So you've got a bottle of wine that was open on night 1, night 2, and now night 3, and taste all of them and see if you have a preference. Many people will prefer the wine that was, especially white wines, that was opened on the first night. A lot of people will prefer the red wine that was opened on the third night. And the next most important preference would be for the second night of the red wine. And the younger the red wine, the more the opening, the more air will be interesting. It's also a good indication to see if the wine is as good or improves. That's a great indication that this is a wine that still has a lot of future ahead of it. If it's not as good the next day, chances are that's a wine that will not do a lot of, will not benefit from aging. What temperature should our refrigerator be? Oh boy, it's always easier to let your wine warm up than it is to try to cool it down. So I would start a little cool, pour it in the wine glass, let it sit for a little bit, and then go for it. That brings up another issue of old wines. If someone has an old wine, and if you want to buy wines for special occasions, that's a great idea. If you have children's birthday, if you had anniversaries, if you have wedding anniversaries, whatever, look for and start collecting now for that period of time. What I would say is that when you have an older bottle of wine, it can be very delicate. Don't decant it. If you're going to decant anything, decant a young red wine, don't decant an old red wine, because it's very fleeting. And if you give it too much air, it can just poof, disappear. And that's a wine that might be 25, 30 years old. By the way, the Riesling is, by and large, a wine that can age every bit as good as any red wine. As a matter of fact, I challenge red wine producers all over anywhere in the world to compete with us with our Riesling. Whether the wine is 20 years old, 25, 30 years old, even 35 years old, Rieslings can be enormously wonderful. I think they're every bit as interesting, if not more interesting, than old red wines. Is Riesling fermented in cast steel barrels or in the bottle? Great question. We bring the Riesling in from the winery. It's stemmed and crushed and goes right into a stainless steel tank. It's fermented in stainless steel, aged in stainless steel, bottled right out of stainless steel, goes into the bottle. So what you're getting is the purest expression of a grape there is. No other wine grape varietal can be handled like that and turned into such a wonderful wine. There's no malolactic fermentations to complex it. There's no lees aging. There's no other varietals that are blended with it to make it a little bit more interesting. It just gets the purest expression going. I just love the wine. So thank you for that question. I'm lucky enough to have a cave. How long can I age a Riesling, or is it more of a wine to be drunk down? Well, I think I just answered that. Buy a lot of it, age it. The wines will mature and develop and improve. And I think a great Riesling will rival a great Burgundy of the same year with a great vintage. How many cases of Riesling do we produce? Around 1,300. Another interesting thing is that comes up is, why do we clink glasses? Because with consuming wine, you have the sense of sight, you have the sense of smell, the sense of taste, and the only thing that's missing is the sense of sound. So that's why we clink glass, or at least that's a good one. I'll also give you a little apocryphal story. Somewhere in the 13th century, Charlemagne was laying in bed dying from battle, and his generals were getting bored with him having a long, lingering, slow death. So they went out wine tasting, and they came back in the late afternoon, early evening, completely shit-faced. Oops, I guess I can't say that. Schnockered. And they barged into Charlemagne's bedroom and said, "Come on, buddy, you got to drink with us. This is great stuff." And Charlemagne is going, "Just leave me alone. Just let me die." And finally, he realized that drunk generals are drunk generals, and they are not to be trifled with. So he finally had to sit up and drink with them just to get rid of them, which he did. And they finally left. And lo and behold, he started to recover, and hence the winery has a called Bernkasseler, and one of their special wines is Bernkasseler Doctor, supposedly named after Charlemagne's recovery. Apocryphal that it may be, it's still a lovely story, and also Riesling is almost as good and can challenge champagne for a morning glass of wine if you are so inclined. Anyhow. Okay, what appellation control benefit California wines? Why or why not? Okay, we do have an appellation controllee goes back to the 14th century, 1411, I should say, and it was with Roquefort cheese, I believe. And in California and the United States, we have an appellation. So our appellation for Spring Mountain is called the Spring Mountain District Association, or Spring Mountain District, and then we have a Spring Mountain District Association of Growers and Wineries. And what that does is it protects the grape. So some folks on the other side of, in the Sonoma side, started advertising themselves as being on the Sonoma side of Spring Mountain. And the BATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, got involved and said, no, you can't do that because Spring Mountain is a defined area. In Napa Valley, we have a number of sub-appellations. And so on the mountains, there is Diamond Mountain, which is just north of us. There is Mount Veeder to the south of us. On the east, across the Napa Valley, is Howell Mountain. Down in the valley floor, there's St. Helena, there's Oak Knoll, there's Canaris. So there are these appellations that do control and protect the agricultural product from being misused. And can I talk about Cook's Flat Reserve? Yeah, very quickly. We make a small amount of wine called Cook's Flat. George Cook was the first owner of the property. He homesteaded it, and there's an 8-acre parcel that preceded us with the name called Cook's Flat, reasonably flat. And we make a very limited amount of Cabernet, well, it's mostly Cabernet, and we call it Cook's Flat Reserve. We make it in a way that we are trying to compete directly with the first gross of Bordeaux. So we have in our sites Lafite, Latour, Aubryon, Margaux, etc. And we do a very small amount. Each bottle is numbered, and lo and behold, right here, give me that, is a bottle of the 2016. This particular bottle is numbered 1560 out of 1347, and it comes in a tissue wrap like this, and this is the seal that is on the document that George Cook got, and we have, from the United States Land Office, that gave him title to the property. And it was signed by the most illustrious of all presidents, most well-known anyway, a guy named Chester A. Arthur. He was only president for 3 years. He not only signed this on December 5th, 1884, but he also signed the opening of the Washington Monument on December 6th, 1884. Guy was in 2 places, long ways across the country. And I like this particularly since my first child was born on December 5th, 1970, and repeal was December 5th, 1933. Anyway, it's a lovely wine. It's expensive. I won't tell you how much. If you're interested, go on the website. It is a fabulous wine. And
Stu,
yes.
I just want to do a quick time check. I
Yeah.
know some people have some things to get to at 6 o'clock, so I think we could probably take one final question if you'd like.
Oh, what was the name of the winery related to Charlemagne? Oh, that was, come on, no, Bernkasseler Doctor. And I always thought Riesling was sweet. Oh my God. If I had a nickel for every time I heard I don't like Riesling because it's sweet, I could retire anywhere. Um, we do a dry Riesling. Riesling is just such an underrated wine, and I'm glad you like it. You make me feel it's a life goal. I feel like Sisyphus rolling the rock up over the hill, and just when I think I'm getting to the top, boom, it rolls back down on me. But you've given me confidence. Thank you for liking it. Oh, and do you and your brother still like each other? Um, Kind of interesting. Didn't realize it, but our father worked with his brother, and so working with a brother is like a marriage. Mostly it's good. Sometimes there are issues, um, but by and large, it's good because we have the trust in one another that when one of us isn't there, we know everything is going to be okay and be looked after and taken care of. And fortunately, our differences in taste are fairly minor. I like big red wines that are black fruit and briary. He still doesn't know what I mean by briary. And he and my son Sam are more in the red fruit of red wines. And we can handle those subtle differences.
Well, thank you so much. I know I learned a lot tonight. I think everyone else here did as well. We really appreciate your time and being here and your partnership on Homecoming, from both you personally and the winery. I know we're glad to hear that the damage from the glass fire wasn't too bad. And we're all certainly, hoping for the entire region to come out of this in a good place, I guess. Thank you to our attendees for tuning in. If you don't have anything else planned this evening, at 7 o'clock is the Homecoming Rally that is produced by the UC Berkeley UC Rally Committee. And the links for all of your events this weekend are on the Homecoming website and also in the Guidebook mobile app, if that's your preference. So thank you so much again to Stu and to everyone else for being here, and go Bears.
Go Bears.